Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar from AI marketing platform Pasado in conjunction with iGaming Business. In the first of a series of 3 webinars on the use of creative AI, Pasado Director of iGaming Paul McNay and Head of Solutions Consulting Graham Kemp-Jones will explain how artificial intelligence can be used to optimize the language in your marketing campaigns, potentially increasing conversions up to 41%. Please use the question facility to ask questions throughout the webinar, and I will put those to Paul and Graham at the end. The webinar is also being recorded and will be available to view at iGaming Business and IGB Live websites from tomorrow morning. Over to Paul and Graham.
Right, good afternoon, everyone. If you're dialing in from another time zone, good morning or good evening. And if you're watching this on record, I've got no idea what time it is, but just good to have you on the conference call. So thanks for joining the webinar. How to turbocharge your revenue in 2019 using AI as your creative ally. So my name is Paul McNay. I'm the head of iGaming for Pasado. I'm joined with Graham.
Hi everyone, super excited to be here. So Graham Kemp-Jones, and I'll be with Paul on this webinar with you.
So we'll do a quick intro. We'll look at 3 quite specific industry problems, 3 potential solutions. What I'm not going to do is product sell the hell out of this, because Graham and I were talking about how many webinars we've been on where you try and join and learn something, and then they end up just pushing a product at you. So what we're going to try and do is look at some real issues and how you can use to resolve those. So moving on, who are Pasado? So the company was founded in 2012. It spun out of an existing business called Upstream. The reason why the audience in iGaming has never heard of Pasado is it's a US headquartered business with a global footprint, and let's be honest, until a few months ago, most US companies couldn't even spell iGaming. It's an award-winning platform. It's been recognized as one of the 50 most disruptive companies in the US, and it has a type of technology that is transforming sectors. Just a very quick overview of what we've done. We've had over $1 billion in incremental revenue for our clients. We've served over 100 billion impressions, run now for nearly 15,000 campaigns. And one key takeaway from here is that we've had an average conversion uplift of 41%. Now that was in the last 12 months. And Graham, when we spoke earlier, I'm not aware of any other technology that can deliver that kind of uplift.
No, for fear of not trying to sell, as we said a minute ago, yeah, it's revolutionary kind of results for sure.
Yeah, let's not contradict ourselves. So looking at the problems, so we try to identify sort of 3 key areas in which we can make a difference. And before we get into that, I just want to give you a brief overview of what the platform does. So in terms of human interaction, you have the right-hand side of the brain, which tends to be more creative, and that's where you most people have certain cognitive behavioral clues that have things like creative behavior, writing, creation of storytelling. And then on the left-hand side of the brain, it tends to be much more analytical. So when we build messages and campaigns, there's some aspects of creativity on the right side of the brain, but what we tend to do is we tend to focus on the left-hand side of the brain, and we're very prescriptive, and we tend to be quite focused on the numbers. And I want to go through how that kind of breaks down. So when we look at how AI is used in iGaming today, it tends to be a focus on the left-hand side, on data AI. So that's all about number crunching, that's all about analytics. And what we're going to talk to you about is how you can also use elements of creativity. And there was a story in the Evening Standard 3 months ago, and in it, it was claiming that AI could never take over creative elements of the storytelling process. And I'm going to debunk some of that today, because creative AI is alive, it's being used in multiple sectors outside of iGaming, and it is transforming businesses. So how is data AI used today? Principally, we see it in a very similar way to how it breaks down into other sectors. So we're looking at acquisition, how you identify customer segments, allocate sign-up offers, manage costs. We use AI in retention, and there's a lot of tools now, such as Optimise, Beehive, that are creating bespoke customer journeys and mapping out how you engage the brand, your consumers. So really refining that user experience, creating micro segments to further push the boundaries of personalization. And then looking at, as I say, bespoke customer journeys. We're also seeing how AI is used in fraud and problem behavior to prevent fraud, identify those key attributes that could highlight possible problem behavior before they're happening, and then managing risk. So all of these areas we're actively seeing today in iGaming. Now, where we see creative IA falling into place is in these key areas. And Graham, I know that with your experience at Pasado, you've personally seen how we can redefine these particular areas. Can you just give us a quick overview of each of these?
Yeah, sure. So if I start with ad efficiency, right, where you're spending a whole bunch of money on paid channels, how do you make those dollars work harder for you? So how do you make sure that the creatives you have in play are the best in class, right? How do you test at scale and optimize language and content all the time? So how do you tweak and understand what differences are when you've made a tweak to some language or to an image that you're paying for? How do you make sure that's as good as it can possibly be? If I then kind of move into activation or upsell, we tend to focus on the key touch points in any journey. So those interactions that have a significant volume, and the critical thing here is to make sure that, again, you're getting as much conversion from every vital touch point in a customer journey as you possibly can. So we're trying to make sure we get customers over the line.
Yeah, and just on that point, I mean, I know with your work with customers across different sectors, you tend to break it down into the most valuable touch points, don't you? So that you look at things like post-registration optimization, you look at how to get people to cross-sell and upsell to high value products and services.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, as you said, Paul, it's trying to find the key points in the customer journey to, where is the biggest drop-off? Is it first deposit? Is it, people filling in the first part of a form and not completing that journey, or they're not checking out from their basket? So they are the points or the customer interactions that we want to optimize the most and prevent that drop-off in any customer or in any digital journey. And the same thing could be said about churn, right? You've had an opportunity to learn through a series of interactions with your customers. It's critical that you use the right language that resonates with them, so that at that important milestone you no longer lose them, right? So you've had 10, 15 interactions with any customer, potentially more. You need to have used those interactions to learn how they want to be spoken to and what they want to see to prevent them churning.
Yeah, and I heard a great quote about reducing churn and using these channels. So when we communicate to people via SMS and push messaging, they're very personal channels because it's taking you in straight into a device. And the expression I heard was that we're being personal in how we connect with people, but we're not speaking the customer's language. And and that for me is always that disconnect. A brand speaks like it's a corporate brand, and it's not speaking how customers speak for themselves.
Yeah, and look, we'll come on to this shortly, I think, but we found through the experiments that we've run in our experience that emotions typically contribute 60% of the variance of response. So that means it's not as important to talk about the product as actually emotions or emotional words and phrases and language that will best inspire you to take an action.
Okay. And coming back to this question of can machines have a place in the creative process? So I mean, for a start, machines have no ego, no bias. A machine is constantly learning about your audience, and so it's always adapting to how your audience responds to certain stimulus, certain words and behaviors and images that you use in your communication to promote your brand, promote your offers. And machines absolutely have a place in doing this. And what we're going to look at is how the creative process is developed and how a machine can beat a human pretty much every time. So first of all, when we actually speak to our consumers, how are we communicating them? What kind of language are we using? The typical adult has around 40,000 words in their vocabulary. And we did a study of the top 20 brands, and we were looking at the words they use in their subject lines when they communicate their brand, their whole proposition to a consumer. And bearing in mind, you've got 2 or 3 seconds to make a meaningful connection. Yep. So, the amount of words that these brands, the top 20 brands in the UK, were using is just 293 words. And Graham, you know, how have we got in a situation where this language has become so narrow?
I think it's like self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If you're not exploring regularly and going beyond your normal behavior, then you'll continue to reuse things over and over again. So you think of buttons or you think of descriptions of products. You know, there are thousands of ways of describing the features of my laptop or whatever it is that you're marketing, and yet more often than not, and this study will show you that you know, we're forever using the same hooks. It's 50% off, it ends today. You know, some kind of urgent message to drive someone to open or click through an email.
And you've seen that kind of behaviour in other sectors, haven't you? Because you've seen this in financial services like 5 years ago.
Yeah, and I guess the regulation is so tight there around what you can say about the product, but that wouldn't stop you using, you know, hundreds or thousands of different words as emotional hooks to drive someone to be interested in a mortgage, a loan, a savings account, and so on. So I feel like this study kind of shows you exactly the self-fulfilling process that we have in play now, where A/B testing will only let you test 2 things at once, not thousands of things.
And just on passing in this, we carried out a small survey, again looking at the top 5 or top 10 iGaming companies, and you wouldn't be surprised to hear that the total number of words we used in our email communication, our subject lines, was even lower than this. It was about 185, and the top 5 words we used were free, bet, spin, now. And we've turned, how many times have you received an email or you've checked out your competitors' emails and everyone is saying the same thing, and it's pretty much the same 5 or 10 words. So yeah, this is looking at how we use potential, and I very quickly want to touch on the creative process. So as an individual, we tend to go through 5 stages of creative design. So we have the preparation, where we look at what we're going to set up, and this could be because you diarize what campaigns you're putting out. You have the incubation phase, ideation, evaluation, and finally elaboration. But what I want to touch on here is how the individual human being goes through the process of coming up with a creative idea. In my experience, it's typically been, you know your diary, you know all the campaigns that are going out, but you know, who wants to spend 6 weeks putting together an email subject line, email body? Yeah, so most people tend to leave that until the last minute. And then what they draw on is their own knowledge and insight and their own understanding of what words and what phrases tend to work with their customer base. And they back this up with a certain amount of knowledge through A/B testing. So the human is drawing on quite a limited range of knowledge, because that's human beings, that's all we've got, unless you've got a base of information that you share. And so this is then the limit of that individual's knowledge when they're trying to come up with a creative process. And this leads to some quite random opinions. And this is an example for a charity that we did some work with. As a business, we're new to iGaming, so I just pulled out some examples here to show you different elements that we put together. So Graham, I mean, talk me through this. These two look very similar, right?
Yeah, and actually, one is the control message that the company run with today, and another one is an AI-generated or machine-generated content. We got to the winning message by running an experiment. The experiment uses a principle of statistics called experimental design, and I guess that's the secret sauce of our technology. And it allows us to test multiple dimensions simultaneously to get to an answer, way quicker than an A/B test. For example, what you can see on here on this Facebook ad is, there are only a few dimensions I can test. So I've got a post text, which is the first text that appears, that's above the image. I've got the image itself, and I've actually got text over the image. I've got a headline, so click here to see how you can help us make history. That would be the headline. And then you would have the description underneath. So there are only, a handful of possible things you can test here. If I run an A/B test, I could test, one image against the second image, or I could test a headline against a different headline. The way that our platform works is to run these things simultaneously. So I could run with 4 headlines, 4 images or more, a bunch of different text. I could have different descriptions underneath. So I could suddenly have, 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4. That's 1,024 permutations. The permutations I build can run into the millions. And the way our technology would work is that you would sample that down and run a test on 8 or 16 messages. Long story short, you get, thousands or millions of A/B tests in a single hit, and you find out the answer tomorrow. So if you roll the slide on, we can now see that, the one on the left turned out to be the control, the human-generated copy. The content on the right is generated by our platform. The difference between the two is 32% in terms of actual conversions, right? So additional people donating to this charity.
And again, in this slide, we see how someone in a creative marketing team could have easily put together this based on their understanding of what they think's work. And again, an interesting point is I have quite often spent hours, days even, arguing the toss about what color call to action is going to be, and it's all subjective because we never really know the potential value of that uplift.
Again, the difference here is that I run the experiment, I find out the winning piece of content, which is on the screen, but I guess more important than that, I now know the contribution of every single element that I've tested. So to your point, Paul, it's no longer an argument between you and I at the coffee machine. I know that the headline that I've got here is 17% better than the control message. I know that the tagline underneath, "Together we're unstoppable," is 12% better than the headline I had before. So I'm now applying statistical rigor to a creative process that has always been, in my mind, self-fulfilling and based on my views and my opinions and what I've tested before.
So you're effectively taking the subjectivity out of writing this precise content in order to drive a call to action. And that's what it's about, right? It's driving conversions, driving call to action.
Yeah, it's performance marketing.
Yeah. And then looking on at how both we have these random opinions, and then we tend to repeat the mistakes over and over. And some of that is that we're in our comfort zone. So we get used to using a certain type of language, and we think that the customers also get used to this. But what I'm going to share with you today quite clearly shows we are not speaking our customer's language. This slide might look a little complex, but basically at the bottom, we've got the 15 emotions, not created by us. These are the emotions that have been agreed by behavioral psychologists world over as the 15 key emotions for driving cognitive behavior around brand engagement, conversion optimization. And then the bubbles represent the size of an email side, and then the open rate is the main KPI that we're measuring over here. And then what we can see if we roll this on is, Graham, tell me about these emotions. Why do they perform well?
Yeah, I mean, look, just to explain that the size of the bubble is the frequency by which these companies are using those particular emotions. So I can see by eye that fascination is the biggest bubble. That means that this company are using fascination more frequently than any other emotions in their marketing messages. However, there are 10 categories of emotion that are more impactful than fascination. So guess what? Use other language in your communications to drive performance. I can see that anxiety and guilt happened here to be the most impactful categories of language that are being used. I guess we kind of glossed over this, but Passado have what we call the biggest ontology of language. We've tagged and scored language in these 15 dimensions or 15 categories of emotion in 29, I think, now languages. So, when we experiment with something, we know exactly what category that language would fall into. What you can see on the screen is the categorization of the entire audience, and where this gets, in my mind, super powerful is where I then flip this and drill in and out and say, overall anxiety and guilt are working on my customer base, but how does that differ with, low, medium and high value customers? How does that differ between men and women? How does that differ between different geographical territories? How does that differ between active and inactive segments, right, or dormant customers? I can't keep telling dormant customers that they're missing out on something because they've already churned, right? I need to use some kind of reactivation language to win them back.
So you're saying that most brands tend to speak in a certain way, one particular way to their customers. But what you're saying is that by changing the emotions, we drive more engagement depending on the sector, the geolocation, the product, where they are in the life cycle. So can you actually change that and build an engagement roadmap that's actually powered by emotions and emotional language?
Yeah, it becomes like context-based marketing, right? So it's no longer about marketing to all my higher value customers today. It's based on the interactions that you've made and the context that you're in. So I understand more about you as a consumer, or you as a cohort or a segment of consumers, and I can use language that I know is most likely to resonate with that customer base.
And then again, these are the most frequently used emotions. And what you tend to see here is that they've kind of, this brand is particularly looked in with fascination because it's driving, you know, reasonable high level of engagement, around 15%, but it's taking up the bulk of their volume. You know, it's one of the biggest sectors for them.
Yeah, I guess there's one more thing to add here, which would be around urgency. So urgency, you know, is used, is one of the least effective categories of emotion here, and yet the size of the bubble suggests to me that this is being used a lot, and this is common, right? We see that a lot of companies in the UK are using urgency, you know, ends now, ends tonight, must do something now to drive.
Bet now,
right? Free spin now. It tends to be the least impactful because your inbox is full of that noise, if you like.
Mm-hmm. And again, I had this discussion with quite a senior marketing executive at an iGaming business last week, betting on sports, and he was almost reticent to walk away from that purely descriptive message because he felt that, you know, shortening it, you know, just created that sort of impact. Yeah, £30 free bet now.
So test it and understand how impactful it is, and that argument goes away, right? You then prove or disprove that hypothesis with data.
Okay. So how can machines help us scale, create automation, and increase effectiveness? I will mention now that when we talk about AI in the workplace in this context, it's not about letting the AI take over and redefining your brand. You as content marketeers, retain complete control. Think of this as the best aid to content marketeers in the world. And don't think of it in terms of replacing anyone or taking over a decision-making process. So the first thing is unlimited knowledge. We already saw how the top 20 brands only use 293 words. The average human has 40,000 words in their vocabulary. Our database has access to over 1 million words, phrases, emojis, images. Pretty much every word and phrase that's been used in a marketing context in the last 10 years has been tagged and tracked on our system to effectively create the biggest database of marketing language in the world.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess one step beyond that is I'm able to slice and dice that so I can understand the context of how those words and phrases impact response by vertical, by life stage, by different segments and different demographics and so on. So I know how impactful you know, a particular phrase would be for selling mortgages versus driving people to set up a balance on a betting account.
So, and in this context, you know, we're talking about a relatively new sector for Passado. You know, we haven't been in iGaming before, but the machine can learn about the audience and about their responses and create very sector-specific language.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably a whole nother webinar in its own right to go through that in detail. But yeah, I mean, essentially the algorithm is learning, and it will learn for each customer or learn as a segment as it goes through.
One of the games you like playing is this. I'm sure many of you have played Scrabble before. You've probably there at the holidays, whether it's Easter or Christmas, and you get the game out and you play there as a family. So in this example, you have these letters at the top, and I quickly want you to think of a word that you can put together with that. Now imagine you look at these two people playing. The person on the left is using their brain to come up with what they think is the ultimate answer. The person on the right has access to an online thesaurus, Google, online directories and dictionaries, and they are going to beat the person on the left every single time. They have a complete unfair advantage in this game, and it's not a real level playing field. And yeah, we use this analogy to describe what Passado or creative AI can do for your content marketing teams. It effectively gives them an unfair advantage. And just to give you an idea, there were 393 possible combinations from those letters, and the biggest word was marketing. So number two, creative AI is fast.
Yeah, I guess what I would add here is to prepare and evaluate and deploy marketing content takes time, often takes committees of people in different departments, so the brand and the compliance and the legal team work together with a creative team. When you're using technology, you guys will all understand that we need to understand what the context of the message is, and then we can spin out variations and design an experiment in literally minutes. And in terms of deploying content, there are APIs that will connect directly to your serving platforms. So look, it's infinitely quicker than doing it yourself.
And then we have the holy grail of marketeers across the world. So yeah, how we create genuine personalization at scale. And I don't just mean personalization where you segment your audience in order to give them a product, an offer, or a promotion, but actually using the customer's own language, their own words and phrases to identify that particular segment. Again, Graham, can you just give us a brief overview of how we get to this point?
Yeah, well, look, we none of us can jump straight to the right-hand side of the screen, but that's where we're all trying to get to. I guess every company I've ever worked with is trying to figure out, me as a customer, what to communicate to me at what time and what products and so on. But they've never quite figured out how to talk to me. If Paul and I were in the same segment and we're being offered the same product, let's say, you and I are going to respond completely differently to the marketing that we see. So that's the end game. That's where we're trying to get to, where we have to go through this journey of learning on an audience, then beginning to learn on a subset of that audience, so learning on, let's say, active, dormant, men, women, high value, low value, long tenure, short tenure customers. But we can get to personalization pretty quickly. We need around about 50 to 70 interactions to be able to build a model for an individual. So that means that you now understand what makes me tick as a consumer, and how to communicate to me given the context of the life stage or the journey that I'm in.
So this makes complete sense to me, that as brands, we're creating these micro segments to really try and work out what drives customer behavior and customer interaction. Why wouldn't you speak their own language? Why wouldn't you create words and phrases and emotions and messages that resonate purely with that segment?
Yeah, look, I completely agree, and that's what our technology exists to do.
So, I mean, that comes sort of to the end of 3 problems, 3 potential solutions. One of the burning questions I keep on getting asked is why? Why are we going to bother? What's the point? So, I wanted to have a quick look at performance before we finish. We mentioned at the beginning that we've seen an average of 41% increase in conversion, and a conversion would be a sale, registration, cross-sell, app install, 41% conversion across all our clients in all sectors. But what else does it do? So, all of these suggest that we've got one of the highest performing marketing platforms on the planet. As I said, I don't know any other technology that's currently delivering this kind of uplift. And Graham, we spoke before the end. I'm not saying this is a silver bullet. I'm not. There are instances where it can work particularly well, and those where it doesn't work so well. Can you just run me through a couple of your variables, some of the things that a brand will need in order to make the platform come alive and deliver these kind of results?
So, I mean, to start with, you need an open mind, right? So you need to allow us to experiment in a big enough semantic space. So if you come in and you have a closed mind in terms of what you want to test, what language you want to test, and what you want to try out on pages. So do you want to test different templates of a landing page? Do you want to test different formats, different amounts of frames of display ads? Come with an open mind, and very quickly you can get to the best possible content. If you continue to test what you've tested before, guess what? The lift will be tiny. If you don't explore, the breadth of our language, then again, the performance will be limited. I guess the other slight use case which is challenging is where a purchase is not is a mandatory purchase, right? So something like car insurance, there's no emotions attached, certainly in my mind, to car insurance. I need the product, it has a certain price, and there's no elasticity in terms of performance of emotion. That would be one example.
And elasticity in this context is the difference between the worst performing message and the best performing message. So it's the level of engagement that a customer base has with language.
Yeah, if I think of car insurance, frankly speaking, I'm looking for the cheapest. That has a certain level of cover.
The second cheapest, apparently.
The second cheapest, right? But what I'm not doing is it's not an emotional purchase in any way. It's something that it's a mandatory kind of thing that I need, a legal thing that I need to have. there are very few use cases that fit into that mold. That's one that springs to mind. But most purchases that we all make have a level of emotion attached to them, the same as gaming. It's about resonating and understanding how to speak to me, how to address me, and how to stand out from the noise in my inbox or the clutter that's on pages.
Cutting through the clutter, that's where we need to go to. So, ladies and gentlemen, before we finish, I just want to ask you 3 questions. Why would you use creative AI? First of all, are you a performance or brand-focused marketing business? We do speak to many brands where the brand is the fundamental driving point of the customer interaction. If you're in that space, then this tend not to work so well because you tend to be over precious about the brand. If you're a performance marketeer, this platform can help you drive performance. Secondly, do you embrace technology to achieve a competitive advantage? Graham, we were speaking earlier about how quickly this tech can be up and running, because it's a standalone platform. It doesn't require integration.
Yeah, I mean, look, to conclude an experiment, if you like, we typically need to try and get to around 2,000 responses. So, look, long story short, that means is I can take a control creative today. I can spin up an experiment. I can launch that experiment tomorrow. That experiment would be testing hundreds of thousands of permutations on your audience. I would conclude the experiment and give you the winning copy tomorrow. So I'm no longer spending 3, 6, 9, 12 months running A/B tests to find out the best combination of button and hero image, testing everything in a single hit and getting there quickly.
And we spoke about this in the context of landing pages, didn't we? So we can help optimize a landing page, and we went through we can carry out thousands of experiments on a single page to optimize that in a matter of hours, days, depending on how much volume got going through, versus it might take you 9 months to optimize a landing page using A/B testing, by which point you just introduce, the landing page.
Yeah.
And then the final question, what are your expectations? We're all under pressure in the industry around hitting KPIs, driving more performance. We've seen over the last 6 months how some of the market leaders are driving double-digit 20, 30, 40% growth in the market. So how are you going to achieve that? What technology are you going to add that can help you impact that bottom line? So that's it. I would like you to drop me a line if you want to get a copy of the deck. Really appreciate the time, and I just want to thank you for listening, and I believe now we've got time for some questions.
Hi guys, thanks very much for that. That was really interesting. We have got some questions that have come through, so I'm going to start going through them. There was one which I think you sort of touched on a little bit at the end, but maybe we could unpack it a little bit more, which is what is this technology sort of more applicable to in terms of is it particular types of brands that could be using it or particular types of campaign? Can you sort of give some examples of where it's best applied? I mean, thinking specifically of iGaming.
Yeah, look, I'll take this one. So this is Graham. I think to answer the question, it's going to be way more impactful where the marketing has a clear objective and an outcome. So editorial is more challenging. How do you measure that? How do you measure and value engagement? We would tend to work on campaigns that are at critical milestones in any customer journey and that have a measurable outcome. So, first deposit, it's getting someone to add something onto their account, stopping them churning. The key points in any customer journey, as opposed to editorial content.
I mean, Hannah, if you mean what channels, and it's omni-channel, so effectively we can optimize Facebook and display ads. So we've got an integration directly with Facebook. You can just load up the campaigns, go straight into Facebook Campaign Manager. Email subject line, email body. We can optimize landing pages and test all the elements of that. And then things like SMS, push messaging. Even old-fashioned snail mail, actual post mail.
Yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's helpful. Okay. And I was curious as well, you said it's not about letting the AI take control, which I'm sure is something that most people will be sort of pleased to hear, but how does it affect the role of the marketer kind of fitting into the use of this technology? How does that change for them in terms of kind of adopting it and bringing it into what they do?
It quite simply, it makes you a smarter marketeer. It allows you to create language that resonates more with your customers, and because of that, you get more clicks and more conversions. It also means that you can share insight that at the moment is impossible for a content marketeer to understand. So, for example, we can drill down to the specific emotions that are driving a level of customer engagement across different segments of your audience, different products at different times during the life cycle. And then your brand team can use that to design, products, promotions that really engage those customers at different stages of their journey with you as a brand.
So, and if you were sort of coming into this as a newbie to it and wanting to kind of bring this into the way that you were doing things, where would you guys suggest people start? I mean, if they were going to choose a campaign to kind of experiment a little bit and get to grips with it, what kind of campaign would you be suggesting they begin with?
Yeah, so our Facebook ad optimization is really strong. So if you've got brands that are now spending money on Facebook for direct acquisition, that's a really strong performer for us. I think the average is 20–30% and upwards in terms of conversion uplift. And then you've got perhaps what's been our bread and butter, which has been email subject line, email body. But I like to think of it as an end-to-end journey. That if you start top of funnel and you look at Facebook and display ads, you've then got the landing page that we can optimize, and then email subject line, email body. Then we can effectively optimize that whole journey from initial contact through to post-registration optimization.
And obviously the industry's seen quite a lot of focus on kind of responsible marketing and kind of regulation in that area. Is there a way in which this technology can help people make sure that their messaging is responsible and within those regulations and kind of doing all the things that are required of them in that respect?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're able to blacklist, whitelist, apply filters and logic to the content that's coming out of our platform. So, if, as an example, we work with 8 of the top 10 banks in the world. There's highly regulated industry. There's a huge amount of things that you can and can't do, and we've worked in all of those contexts. So it would be exactly the same in gaming. You would apply certain logic so that you do not use language that is in any way misleading or is misrepresenting the brand. I think we didn't quite answer this question before, but we touched on it in that this isn't machine learning let loose on your audience. There's still always a human kind of QA step, right? So we will generate language, but it will always go through an approval process with you to make sure that we've not overstepped the mark in any way, or that we are still within your tone of voice. So look, we work in that kind of highly restricted, regulated world across all the other sectors. iGaming would be no different in that regard.
And there's also an element of brands looking to take more control from their affiliate partners. So, for example, previously you might let an affiliate partner tweak some of the content that you look to promote, whereas now that's all going to be done or predominantly done in-house. Again, our platform can be used to optimize those messages that are pushed out via the affiliate channels as well, so that you can adapt the language for their audiences.
That's interesting. I think that kind of element of fitting in with the affiliate market is definitely something that people would be interested in. The other last thing is sort of related, but slightly more general. I'm just curious as to what you guys think about how the industry should be approaching marketing in general. There's obviously been sort of a bit of a clamp down in advertising and marketing in certain ways at the moment. And do you think it's time that kind of the industry took a slightly more innovative approach to its messaging, basically, and kind of stepping away from the kind of urgency marketing that we see so much of?
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing at the moment, if you use the UK as an example, is that the Gambling Commission are pushing back on what they see as just a product-focused promotion, where you're constantly just hitting customers with free spins, free bets, and there's no effort to talk about the brand or features. And I think if we don't do this voluntarily as a sector, it will be forced upon us. But there's a reason why you would do it. Again, we've seen in banking, Yeah, iGaming now, where banking and financial services were 5 years ago. 5 years ago, the banking and financial services sector were focusing purely on product-led marketing, 0% interest rate for 6 months. Come and get this, the fantastic loan, transfer bank balance. And what they found is that, again, they all started saying the same things, the same way. There was no differentiation. And then what we've taken a number of our clients on is this journey over the last 5 years, where they'll now personalize the message. So it'll be, hey, John, Sue, we know you're buying a house. We've got you an exclusive deal, 2% discount off the mortgage for the lifetime, and then a call to action. And we've proven that by moving away from a purely descriptive message to adding emotion, that that drives 60% of the performance uplift, and we're creating 40% more conversions for these brands. And I'm pretty convinced that we'll be able to do the same in iGaming.
Excellent. Well, look, guys, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a really interesting presentation and really good to hear from you. So thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks for your time, and thanks to everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
Oh yes, and join us later on in the month for the rest of the series. We'll have 2 more webinars from Pasado.